Hi, my name is Chris Flemish. Welcome to the Redroom. My goal here in the Redroom is to entertain you, dig a little deeper into horror. What makes us scream? Why do we love horror so much? What makes the monsters that we admire and the psychos, what makes them tick? Sometimes I wonder what goes on behind the mask. Today I would like to start with the beginning. Where did horror come from? How did it all get started? And what is horror today? So what's the definition of horror? Definition of horror is an intense feeling of fear, shock, disgust. It came from the Latin word horrere, and horrere means to shudder or hair that stands on end. And a good horror movie just makes the hair in the back of your neck stand up. So as long as mankind has been around, we sat around campfires telling stories, passing time. We didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Facebook, Twitter, TV, all that kind of stuff. So all we had maybe was stories being told about hunts or dangerous creatures. Who knows? Maybe some of those cave paintings were not really telling us what animals were around, but maybe they were the first horror stories. Remember the story about Perseus, how he went to kill Medusa, the first Gorgon? Well, didn't horror creep into mythology and all those good Greek stories? Horror then also crept into religion and into pagan text and into folk tales. Think about this story. You're somewhere in this beautiful place and here comes a snake and he starts talking to your wife and starts to enchant your wife. Tells her to do all sorts of things she shouldn't be doing. And now you know it, you get kicked out of paradise and you're out in this cruel world, naked. I don't know if that's not a horror story, I don't know. Makes for a good one. So after religion and art, folk stories started to make the go around. In 1512, we can find the first woodcutting of a werewolf attack. Now we're going to do an episode on werewolves. That's a guarantee. We're going to do an episode on werewolves because I love them just too much. In ancient Greek literature, we find a reference to the Nuri tribe, Neuri. I hope I pronounced it right, but if not, sorry Greek guys. The Nuri tribe, one day a year, they would all transform into wolves. So that's how far back we can go back to horror and all these kind of cool stories. As time passed on and print became more abundant, more available to common people, all these folk tales started to get written down and printed and distributed. I'm sure you've heard of the Brothers Grimm. In 1812, they released their book, Kinder- und Hausmärchen. Translated, Children and House Tales. I don't really know if all their original stories were appropriate for children, but in those days, yeah, there was no PG rating or nothing. Come on in, have fun. Now the birth of horror as we know it came in the late 1700s, and it's an era which is called as Gothic horror. Now, you've heard that a lot, Gothic horror. Kind of like a little bit of the scenery of the Redroom here a little bit to go in line with Gothic horror. If I see all those beautiful buildings, those castles and the paintings from that era, I'm a sucker for it, what can I say? The first time the term horror itself was used in print was in a novel called The Castle of Antantro in 1764. And this was by Horace Walpole. I hope I pronounced that right. But the first real horror classic that so many of us love came to be in 1818 by the lovely hands of Mary Shelley. Here's to you, Mary. Thank you. Mary Shelley Frankenstein, written in 2 days. It's just incredible. And don't worry, Mary will get her own episode one day again. She is on the list. But besides Mary, we had a bunch of other great writers. Bram Stoker's Dracula, Charles Dickens, and of course Edgar Allan Poe. So when finally film came around, silent film, around the late 1800s, horror was a big favorite, of course. And one of the early clips from the Lumiere brothers was called The Spooky Tale. In 1896, we find what some consider the first horror movie, The Mansion of the Devil by Georges Méliès. It's a good-looking film, and Georges Méliès stars in it himself. So go and check it out. Sometimes you can find it on Amazon, or you can find it on Netflix, maybe even small parts here on YouTube. So as many more horror movies came around, a new style of horror came to be after World War I. This kind of horror was more realistic. Of course, these people had just gone to a world war. So out of this era, we got The Golem in 1920 and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is actually currently on Netflix. And then the first horror movie I ever saw. I was a little boy, I was 6 years old, and I saw Nosferatu from 1922. And I fell in love. It was on some German channel late at night, and I just watched it, and I was in love. Nosferatu was done by William Plump. A quick fun fact is that he was born in 1888 in Bielefeld, and was then the German Empire. And after World War I, he moved to California, and where he passed away in Santa Barbara in 1931 at the age of 41. Thank you, sir, for my lifelong addiction. In the late 1920s, sound was added to movies, and you can imagine that made a big difference. Universal was one of the main studios in those days making horror movies, and to most fans, that is still the golden era of horror. We had Dracula, The Mummy, Frankenstein, and of course my favorite, it was a controversial movie, but I loved Freaks. For a long time, Freaks was banned because they felt that they were exploiting people with disabilities. But it's a great movie, and if you can see it today, watch it, pick it up. It's a beautifully filmed movie, and it captures something that, I just don't know, it captures a spirit that a lot of movies can capture even today. Of course, these also were the high days of Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. The way they embodied these characters, we will never forget them, and they are just awesome. So as time slowly progressed, horror became a parody of itself, and we saw the werewolf show up on daytime TV shows. It just wasn't really what it used to be anymore. And we see that these days with vampires and werewolves and all sorts of things. So let's take a quick sidestep. Let's not forget about horror and literature, because even though movie was kind of slowing down, we still had a lot of great authors and writers out there doing their best to write the best possible horror. In 1890, one of the most amazing horror writers was born. Howard Philip Lovecraft. At the time, he was so unappreciated and poor, he barely was able to make a living for himself. The man barely died poor, and these days he's considered like a god in horror writing. I always find that very tragic when artists never reap the fruit from all the work that they do. So in 1917, he wrote a short called The Tomb. In 1926, he wrote, for many people, a favorite, The Call of Cthulhu, and many more. So if you can, pick up some Lovecraft, you won't be disappointed. And there's so much to talk about Lovecraft that I really think I will do an episode on Lovecraft himself. And of course, an American author that I really like, Ray Douglas Bradbury. Here's two books that you might like. Something Wicked This Way Comes. And then here I have The October Country. I picked them up for about $1 at Amazon. So again, Amazon is a good source for cheap books. Pick them up for 99 cents per $3 shipping. In the 1950s, horror was more for teens and started to focus more on outer space. Forbidden Planet. The Day the Earth Stood Still. There were so many good movies in those days, all with the outer space topic. One of my personal favorites is in 1956, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Although it might be cheesy if you look at it these days, I still like it. And I also like the remakes. Now, on the other side of the planet, in Japan, in 1954, we saw Godzilla be born. And also in literature in 1954, we got Richard Madsen, I Am Legend. Great, great, great book. Don't worry about the Will Smith movie. Still a good movie. I did not like it, but I liked the original a lot better. Very similar to The Last Man on Earth, which I enjoyed tremendously. And in 1959, we got The House on Haunted Hill by Shirley Jackson. Also a very, very good book and a great movie. At the same time, in the UK, Hammer Films started to shoot their horror films. And this was the first time that we got horror movies in color. The first horror movie in color with red blood was in 1957, The Curse of Frankenstein. So Hammer Films add a little bit of sex to a movie, a little bit of blood. So blood on babes, what else is new, huh? It's just a recipe for success. In the 1970s, we see a shift again. This time, horror movies are starting to shift away and are starting to go to the occult. In 1968, Roman Polanski used Ira Levin's novel, Rosemary's Baby. And if you haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, it's a really, really great movie, and I love it a lot. In 1973, we got The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. I mean, pick up the book. It's a great book. It's a little bit different than the movie. It's not a girl, but it's a boy here as our main character. But it's a great book. If you can get one of the originals, just pick it up. Again, Amazon, your local bookstore. If you do have a local bookstore, go support them. Pick up their books or go to their clearance bin or something. A lot of times they will make great deals with you. In 1976, one of my personal favorite horror movies was made, The Omen. I really, really enjoyed The Omen. I enjoyed part 2 and part 3, but the first one is just phenomenal. Also in 1976, we get a movie that was made from a thrown-away manuscript. Tabitha King picked up the manuscript of Carrie out of her husband's trash bin, and that was then submitted, turned into Carrie, the movie we know now. Even though Stephen King wasn't too happy with the way Carrie turned out, afterwards he kind of changed his tune a little bit and was happy about it, but I thought it was still a great, great movie. I was not a fan of the remake. Please stop doing remakes. Please leave the original to what it is. You can do better than the original. Unless, I don't know. Do you know of any movie that came out better as a remake? I don't know. One of my favorite writers, Stephen King, of course. The Stand, by many, considered one of his best books. It's an awesome book. It can be used as a weapon. And then my favorite book, Stephen King has the Dark Tower series with the Gunslinger, episode 1. I enjoy all books seriously. I just really, really enjoy them a lot, and I've read them many, many times. So go pick up some of Stephen King's books. He's got plenty for you. And at the same time, another great author. I cannot show you all the books from Dean Koontz because I have just way too many. I have at least 30 or 40 of his books. I just thoroughly enjoy Dean Koontz. And then from the UK, we got Clive Barker. Clive Barker is phenomenal. Not only are his books just phenomenal, his movies are just, they're different. Thank God, something different, something new, something way scary. He took horror to a new level. Just, here's horror, here's Clive Barker horror. So if you don't know Pinhead, well, what else should I say? If you don't know Pinhead, we're done. And then, of course, Anne Rice, another great writer, Anne Rice. Pick up her books, a lot of fun, great stuff. Late 1970s, 1979, we get the Amityville Horror. And that still inspires franchises today. The Haunted House. I think the last few movies like The Conjuring and so on have done a great job capturing that spirit. But read some books of the real story that happened at the Amity Horrorville. Read about the exorcism that took place there and the possessions. It's some scary shit. 1970s was a great time for horror, not just in literature and movies, but also for music. There were a lot of bands that were using elements of horror in their music in those days, and even still do so today. But that will be its own fun little episode. So in the 70s, creature features were back. fuck, yeah, creatures, bring it on, that's what I want. I want to see scary, crazy shit things that I could never imagine that will just have me think about for like weeks and days and just, I want to watch it again, over and over and over again. Give it to me, give me more. In 1975, Peter Benchley's book was filmed by Steven Spielberg, Jaws. A phenomenal movie. It's just a great, great fun movie, and you have to see it. And if you can, watch it outdoors while you're sitting in the water. That just makes it great. My favorite 70s horror movie is Ridley Scott's Alien. I watch that movie at least once a year. It's a beautifully filmed movie. The artwork from Giger and so on, the monster, the acting, Sigourney Weaver, the queen of horror. I love her so much. It is just a perfect horror movie. Sci-fi horror, it is just, for me personally, it's way up there. It definitely is in my top 10 of favorite movies of all time. My second favorite horror movie is also sort of a sci-fi movie if you want to. It's The Thing by John Carpenter, the 1981 version. Kurt Russell is just perfect in it. I like his acting. I like everything about it. The setting, the practical effects from Robin Button. Still, and still till this day, there's some of the best practical effects you can ever see. If you haven't seen The Thing, stop what you're doing. Don't even continue this video. Go watch The Thing. You have to see it. It is just phenomenal. And also in the 70s, let's not forget another movie that will for sure get their own episode. In 1974, we got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre by Tobe Hooper. I mean, what a great movie. Leatherface. Leatherface for president. Now that will be something. I'll vote for Leatherface every day. He will cut the budget. He will cut crime. He will cut everything to pieces. I'm not going to say it. So we've crossed over, in my opinion, of course I was raised in the 80s, the great horror era. Poltergeist, The Shining, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, all those movies, Alien 2 and so on. So many great movies in the 80s, so many great books that came out in the 80s. Like I said, Stephen King, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Stand, so many great books. We had Thomas Harris. Of course, this is Silence of the Lambs. I have the Red Dragon somewhere. I own a copy of it. Just didn't have it ready here. Red Dragon was the first in the series of the Hannibal Lecter. I mean, which is my favorite evil guy, my favorite bad guy in horror movies. Thomas Harris is just a phenomenal writer who, if you like the movies, pick up the books. Read the books after you've seen the movie. There's a lot more information in it. And I prefer the books over the movies. I'm sorry. But still, all of it is just freaking great. In 1981, a low-budget movie was made, which might be my all-time favorite. It was filmed in Morristown, Tennessee, The Evil Dead. That movie changed my life. I was a young kid, and together with my best friend, we bribed one of our older friends to go and rent Evil Dead. We couldn't see it. It was banned in a lot of places. Our parents wouldn't allow us to see it at all. So my friend and I, we put some money together that we made. And we had our friend just go to the video place, rent it for us. We watched it, sneaked it back to him the next day, and we had the best fun. Our parents were out of town. They never knew. Sorry, Mom. But it was great. And Evil Dead was just such a different kind of movie. It was just different. The way the filming happened, the practical effects, Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell. What more do I have to say? I'm going to see Bruce Campbell in a few weeks from now, and that will be one thing off my bucket list. Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and then now Evil Dead versus Ash, if you haven't seen it on TV yet. It is awesome. Anyway, back to business. In the 1990s, horror went more to the psychological aspect of it. We got some classics such as Silence of the Lambs, Seven, one of my all-time favorites also, Seven. What a beautiful, beautiful horror movie. And that's a weird thing to say maybe, but if you're a horror fan, you understand what I'm saying. And the first time I saw Japanese horror, like The Ring. At the turn of the century, horror changed into torture horror, or what some call torture porn. We have Hostel, Saw, and a bunch of other movies. Besides the torture horror, there was also the found footage. And this was the first time, at least the first time on a large scale for the large masses, the found footage. Everybody might remember the Blair Witch Project, which was a huge, huge success. But, it was borrowed from Cannibal Holocaust in 1980. And if you really want to see a good, fun horror movie with found footage, go watch Cannibal Holocaust. Don't waste your time on the Blair Witch. I know there's a lot of fans out there. I'm not dissing the movie at all. It's worth a watch. But I think Cannibal Holocaust is just a better horror movie. So we're about where we're at today. We have survived the garbage that they call vampire movies these days, such as Twilight. I'm sorry, but vampires that can live in daylight and sparkle do not belong in the horror genre. I do respect the books. I do respect the movies, how it was made. If people like that sort of thing, that is good. It's just not for me. I don't call it horror. It's more pop than anything else. We're seeing the end of the zombie movies, and where zombie movies are getting their own TV shows where they're very happy and pretty, and they come back to life. And I just don't think that's horror. I am watching a lot of European and Japanese horror movies, and it just seems that in Japan, they try more to get a good story. And in my opinion, I'm a writer myself. If you want to read some of my books, go to Amazon, look for Flemish, Chris Flemish. The only book right now there is The Devil's Whorehouse. And I have a few other books in the works, so go check out Amazon. The link will be below. But it's story. All these beautiful creatures, all these maniacs, all these scares, they are put together by writers who care about the craft of horror, dreaming up something new, something unbelievable, something scary, something we might not want to hear about. And they craft it in a beautiful book. And most of the time, that book then becomes a script, or it comes from a script first. Who cares? But story needs to come first. And I hope that we start to focus again on story, on practical effects, and not on some computer-generated bullshit. Horror is my passion. As you can see, I love it, I live it. I will always do my best to create a good book, to create a good story, because in the end, I'm a horror fan myself. I'm not really writing for you, I'm writing for me. I want there to be good stories. I want there to be fun. I want other people to write good stories. And I do believe there's a great time ahead for horror. So many other genres are just, they're beaten to death. So I don't want to beat this episode to death. I hope you had a great time. If you like this, please share, subscribe, give me a thumbs up. If there's anything you want to see in the future, write it down below. Comments, feedback, it's all appreciated. I'm doing this for you, for the horror fan, to encourage more people to like horror, to learn more about horror. It is not just all blood and gore. There are babes, don't forget that. And with that, we are done. Thank you for watching episode 1. This was a lot of work. I really enjoyed doing it, and I hope it will only get better. So with that, thank you. Adios. See you next time. Bye-bye.